My name is Pearl Bennett, and I was 24 when my father told me I could either take the guest room or move out. It sounds like a simple choice, like something you'd shrug off and laugh about later. But the way he said it, flat, final, like he was dismissing a contractor instead of his daughter, made something in my chest go hollow. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't being offered a compromise. I was being replaced. This story really began 3 months earlier, back when I still believed my family had rules like loyalty and fairness. Back when I thought love meant you didn't have to earn your place at the table every single day. After college, I moved back home because I didn't have much of a choice. Student loans wrapped around my throat like a chain, and my job as a junior graphic designer barely covered gas, insurance, and minimum payments that never seemed to shrink. I wasn't lazy. I wasn't partying. I wasn't drifting. I was surviving. My dad had told me I could stay as long as I needed while I stabilized. And in the beginning, it almost felt like a healing thing. I had the whole second floor to myself, my childhood bedroom, and the old playroom that had once been stuffed with dolls and board games. I turned that playroom into a home office, a secondhand desk, a cheap ergonomic chair, and my laptop balanced on a stack of design books like it was a throne. My mom loved having me around. We cooked together on weekends. Real meals, not the sad, frozen dinners I used to eat in college. I helped my dad with yard work. I cleaned up after myself. I tried, constantly, to make sure they never felt like I was taking advantage. Because that was always the thing, wasn't it? In my family, you could be loved, as long as you weren't inconvenient. And then there was my older sister, Madeline. She was 27 and had been perfect since the moment she learned how to spell her own name. Valedictorian. Full scholarship to Duke. The kind of person teachers bragged about for years after she left their classrooms. She married Ethan, a corporate lawyer who made ridiculous money and somehow still found time to look like he belonged on the cover of a men's magazine. They lived in a downtown condo that probably cost more than my parents' house. Madeline called every Sunday to brag about promotions, vacations, and restaurants where the plates were the size of coasters, and the bill looked like a car payment. Mom always put her on speakerphone, so I always heard everything. It wasn't just the bragging. It was the way my mom's voice changed, lighter, eager, like she was afraid to miss a single detail. It was the way my dad would nod and smile like Madeline's achievements were his personal trophies. And I was just background noise, the daughter who lived upstairs and existed quietly, like furniture. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself adulthood wasn't a competition. But then one Tuesday evening in July, I pulled into the driveway around 6 and saw Madeline's Mercedes sitting there like a warning sign. My stomach tightened. She never came over unless there was a reason. Inside, the kitchen felt heavy. The air had that strange, tense quiet that happens before a storm. My dad sat rigid at the table. My mom's hands were clasped together so tightly her knuckles looked pale. Madeline sat perfectly composed, her hair glossy, her lipstick flawless. Ethan sat beside her, polite posture, eyes darting away when I entered, like he didn't want to be caught watching my reaction. "Pearl," my mom said too gently. "Sweetheart, sit down. We need to talk." Those words never meant anything good in my house. They were the opening line to every lecture, every disappointment, every "we've decided" that somehow always ended with me expected to swallow it. I sat anyway. Dad cleared his throat. "Madeline and Ethan are having temporary housing issues." Madeline jumped in quickly. There was a plumbing disaster at our building, a burst pipe on the floor above us. The condos flooded. I blinked. "Oh my God, that's awful." It was. And for a second, I genuinely felt sorry for them. I pictured ruined floors, damaged furniture, stress. I leaned forward. "How long will repairs take?" "At least 2 months," Dad said. I nodded slowly. "So, are you staying here while it's fixed? Do you need help packing?" Dad's eyes flickered, just the smallest movement, but I caught it. Careful, hesitant. "Pearl," he said, "we're going to need you to use the guest room downstairs." My brain didn't connect the words right away. "I'm sorry, what?" Madeline smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We need the space, Pearl." "The space?" My voice came out thin. Ethan shifted, still saying nothing. His silence felt like agreement. Madeline tilted her head. "We can't exactly share your tiny childhood bedroom, and Ethan needs a proper office. That guest room downstairs is only big enough for a bed." I stared at her. "But those are my rooms." Dad didn't look at me. "You can take the guest room or move out." The sentence was so casual, like he was talking about changing cable plans. I looked at my mom. I waited for her to say something. Anything. I needed her to push back, to remind them that I lived there, that this had been my home too. But she stared at her hands, fidgeting with her wedding ring, like it might save her from having to make eye contact. Madeline's voice turned cheerfully efficient. It'd be better if you're gone by tomorrow. We want to get settled this weekend. It'll be easier if we're not working around your stuff. Tomorrow. I felt a pulse of heat in my throat. You want me out by tomorrow? Dad finally met my eyes for half a second. It would be helpful. Ethan spoke then, finally. His voice was smooth, apologetic in tone, but not in meaning. We really appreciate this, Mr. and Mrs. Peterson. It's been incredibly stressful. He squeezed Madeline's hand. She leaned into him like a delicate victim. And that was the moment something inside me snapped. Not into screaming, not into tears, into clarity. I looked around the table at the people who were supposed to be my family. Madeline looked smug, like she'd won something. Ethan looked uncomfortable, but still silent. Mom looked guilty, but still silent. Dad looked decided. There was no argument that would change this, so I said the only word I had left. Fine. My mom's head jerked up. Pearl. I'll be out by tomorrow evening, I repeated, steady now. Enjoy the space. My chair scraped the floor as I stood, loud and harsh in the quiet kitchen. I walked upstairs with my heart hammering so hard it felt like it might break my ribs. The second I stepped into my room, I started packing. Not slowly, not carefully. Furiously. My hands shook as I yanked clothes off hangers and shoved them into garbage bags. My laptop cord tangled around my wrist. A framed photo of me and Madeline at her wedding tipped over and cracked against the desk. I stared at it for a second, our smiling faces behind broken glass, and I didn't even flinch. I called my best friend, Jennifer. She picked up on the second ring. Jen, I said, and my voice cracked, despite my best effort. I need a huge favor. Can I crash on your couch? Of course, she said immediately. What happened? I told her everything while shoving shoes into a box and trying not to scream. When I finished, there was a beat of silence, and then Jennifer exhaled sharply. That absolute witch, she muttered. She's my sister, I whispered, but even saying it felt wrong now. Jennifer's voice turned practical. Okay, listen. My lease is up in 3 weeks. My landlord isn't renewing because he's selling the building. I was going to ask if you wanted to find a 2-bedroom together. I froze mid-pack. Seriously? Seriously, your timing is awful and perfect. Come stay with me. We'll apartment hunt together. Something hot stung behind my eyes. Not because I was sad, because I was relieved. By midnight, I had most of my essentials packed. I took everything that mattered, my computer equipment, my books, my personal things. I left the childhood furniture behind like I was shedding a skin. Around 7 the next morning, Madeline appeared in my doorway. She was in designer pajamas, holding a coffee mug, looking way too pleased with herself. You're really leaving? She asked. You told me to be gone by tomorrow, I said. It's tomorrow. Madeline blinked like she'd expected me to fold. I didn't think you'd actually do it. She sipped her coffee slowly. I figured you'd take the guest room and sulk for a while. Why would I stay where I'm not wanted? She shrugged. Don't be dramatic. You're young. You're overreacting. Then her smile sharpened. You'll thank me someday. This will force you to grow up. I stopped packing. I looked at her fully. Is that what you tell yourself? I asked quietly. That you're doing me a favor by taking my home? It's not your home, she said, like she was reciting something she'd practiced. It's Mom and Dad's home. You're an adult still living with her parents. It's kind of pathetic. The cruelty landed like a punch because it wasn't even emotional. It was casual. Like she'd been waiting years to say it. For a second, I saw flashes. 2 little girls sharing a bathroom, Madeline teaching me how to braid my hair, sneaking me extra cookies when Mom wasn't looking. And then the image dissolved. That girl didn't exist anymore. I hope the extra square footage is worth it, I said softly. I went back to packing. She stood there for a moment, watching me like she wanted a bigger reaction. Then she left. By 5 that afternoon, Jennifer arrived with her boyfriend's pickup truck. Dad helped load boxes, his face unreadable. Mom cried, but she didn't ask me to stay. Madeline and Ethan were out getting lunch and conveniently missed my entire departure. As we pulled away, I looked back at the house where I'd lived most of my life. It didn't feel like home. It felt like a place I'd been allowed to occupy, until someone more important needed my space. Jennifer's apartment was small, but it was warm, real, lived in. She threw my bags on her couch and handed me a bottle of water like I was a survivor who'd crawled out of a wreck. You okay? She asked. I opened my mouth to say yes, but what came out was the truth. I don't know what I am, I whispered, but I'm not their priority. I never was. Jennifer's eyes hardened. Then we build something better. That night, as I lay on her couch, staring at the ceiling, my phone buzzed with a message I didn't recognize. Unknown number. I ignored it. I didn't know yet that everything was about to get worse, because losing my room was only the beginning. It was the first domino, and my sister, my perfect polished sister, had already set the rest in motion. The first night on Jennifer's couch, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling fan as it spun lazily above me, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of someone else's apartment. Pipes knocking, a distant siren, Jennifer's cat hopping onto the windowsill. It should have felt temporary, humiliating. Instead, it felt like breathing after being underwater too long. Jennifer woke up early the next morning and wordlessly slid a mug of coffee onto the side table next to me. No questions, no pity, just quiet solidarity. That was the first thing I noticed after leaving my parents' house. How little I had to explain myself when I was finally with someone who actually cared. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of apartment tours, budget spreadsheets, and exhaustion. We looked at places that smelled like mildew, places with rent that made my stomach drop, and places that required proof of income that I barely met. Every rejection email stung, but not the way being rejected by my own family had. This pain felt earned. I took on extra freelance design work in the evenings. Logos for startups, Instagram templates for small businesses, anything that paid. I'd sit at Jennifer's tiny dining table until midnight, my laptop humming, my fingers aching. Some nights I cried quietly while exporting files, not because I wanted to go back home, but because I was terrified of failing now that I had no safety net. But something strange happened along the way. The more responsibility I took on, the lighter I felt. 3 weeks after moving in, we signed a lease on a modest 2-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from my office. The rent was higher than I wanted, but split between us, it was survivable. Tight, uncomfortable, but survivable. Moving day was August 15th. I posted a single photo on Instagram. Our empty living room, bare walls, sunlight spilling through dusty blinds. Caption: New beginnings. I didn't tag my parents, I didn't tag my sister. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. The apartment slowly became ours. Nothing matched. We scavenged furniture from thrift stores and Facebook Marketplace. An ugly couch with a mysterious stain. A coffee table missing a leg we stabilized with books. Mismatched lamps that cast uneven light. It was imperfect. And it was mine. Work changed too. I stopped watching the clock. I arrived early. I stayed late. I poured everything I had into my projects like my survival depended on it. Because it did. During our weekly check-in, my boss, Karen, leaned back in her chair and studied me. You seem different, she said, more focused. I nodded. I had to be. Whatever you're doing, she said, sliding a new project brief across the desk, keep doing it. The logo redesign I'd been stuck on for weeks suddenly snapped into place. I created 3 full mock-ups in a single afternoon. Karen assigned me a major client, a local restaurant chain looking to rebrand. They specifically asked for you, she said. For the first time in a long time, I felt something dangerous and wonderful. Pride. Jennifer noticed the change, too. One night, we sat cross-legged on our couch, eating takeout straight from the cartons. You smile more now, she said. You seem lighter. I think I was suffocating, I admitted. I just didn't realize it until I left. You were never background noise, Jennifer said firmly. They made you feel that way. I wanted to believe her. A month into our new place, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I recognized immediately. Ethan, can we talk? I stared at the message longer than I should have. Finally, I replied, about what? About what happened. About Madeline. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our locations, a neutral zone. Ethan looked tired, less polished, like the cracks were finally showing. I didn't know she was going to do that, he said after we sat down. Kick you out like that. She told you she had? I asked. He winced. She said your dad had talked to you already, that you'd agreed to move downstairs temporarily. My jaw tightened. That's not what happened. I know, he said quietly. I know that now. He admitted he should have questioned it, should have talked to me directly. That Madeline had a way of presenting things that made her version sound inevitable. She's jealous of you, he said suddenly. I almost laughed. Of what? My student loans? You have freedom, he said. She's never had that. It didn't excuse anything. It didn't fix anything. But it explained a lot. 3 days later, my mom called. Her voice was tight, strained. Pearl, have you told anyone about your father's finances? My stomach dropped. What? A journalist contacted Madeline about Peterson Construction. And you think that was me? I asked, incredulous. You were very angry when you left, she said carefully. I was hurt, I snapped. And I would never do something like that. She hesitated just long enough. That hesitation haunted me. 5 days later, my phone exploded. Texts, missed calls, Jennifer yelling from the living room, Pearl, turn on the news. The headline made my vision blur. Local construction company under investigation for tax fraud. Madeline called me screaming, accusing me of destroying the family. My father called, cold and furious, demanding the truth. No one believed me when I said I didn't know anything. Except Jennifer. Karma's funny, she said calmly, and it never needs your permission. The investigation escalated. The IRS announced an audit. Contracts were suspended. My last name became something people whispered at work. Karen pulled me into her office and surprised me by asking if I was okay instead of firing me. I know your character, she said. Whatever your father did, that's not you. I nearly cried in her office. Then came the hospital call. My father had a heart attack. I went, because despite everything, I didn't want him dead. In the chapel, Madeline finally cracked, crying, shaking, blaming herself in pieces. I listened. I didn't comfort her. When she asked how I could be so cold, I finally said the truth. Actions have consequences. I walked away. That should have been the end. But it wasn't, because 2 nights later, Madeline showed up at my apartment, and everything finally came out. It was almost 8 in the evening when someone started pounding on my apartment door. Not knocking, pounding. The kind that rattles the frame and makes your heart jump into your throat. Jennifer was at her boyfriend's place that night, which meant I was alone. I muted my laptop, stood slowly, and checked the peephole. Madeline. She looked nothing like the woman who'd smiled while telling me to be gone by tomorrow. Her hair was tangled, mascara streaked down her cheeks, eyes wild and unfocused. She looked unraveled, like something inside her had finally snapped, and there was no one left to catch the pieces. Every instinct told me not to open the door. Against my better judgment, I did. She pushed past me before I could say a word, stumbling into the apartment like she was running from something. We need to talk. You can't just barge in here, I said, shutting the door behind her. This isn't your house. She spun around, eyes glassy. Brandon left me. The words landed heavier than I expected. What? He moved out this morning, she said, voice cracking. And this afternoon I was served with divorce papers. I stared at her. For a split second, there was a cruel, ugly part of me that felt vindicated, that whispered, good. But it passed quickly, replaced by something else. Exhaustion. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. That's a lot. She laughed hysterically. Are you? Because you got what you wanted. I never wanted this, I said quietly. I just wanted to be treated like I mattered. She collapsed onto our mismatched couch, burying her face in her hands. You matter now. You destroyed everything. The reporters wouldn't leave her alone. Her job had put her on indefinite leave. Brandon's lawyer was ruthless. My parents barely spoke to her. I have nothing, she sobbed. Nothing. Something in her phrasing made my skin prickle. Why won't Mom and Dad look at you? I asked slowly. You said that earlier. She froze. What? You said they won't even look at you, I repeated. Why? Her face changed. The tears dried up. The panic twisted into something sharp, desperate. You don't know, she whispered. Know what? She laughed, a broken, jagged sound. You really don't know. All this time you've been playing innocent, and you actually are innocent. My heart started pounding. Madeline, what are you talking about? She looked at me then with something close to hatred. It was me. The room tilted. You what? I'm the one who gave the information to the journalist, she said flatly, about Dad's company. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She stood and started pacing, words spilling out like she'd been holding them back for months. Last Christmas, I was in Dad's office looking for a file. I found the real records, the ones he never showed his accountant. Hidden income, misclassified workers, years of it. My hands went numb. I took photos, she continued. I told myself it was insurance, leverage, just in case. My voice finally came back. You destroyed our father's business. I didn't mean to, she snapped. I thought if it came out a little, just enough, he'd restructure. He'd need me. He'd finally see me as the good daughter again. I laughed once, bitter and hollow. So you framed me? I didn't frame you, she said quickly. I just let him think it was you. You'd already left angry. It made sense. It made sense. To her. You tried to make them hate me, I said, because you were jealous. Her shoulders sagged. Yes. The admission sucked the air out of the room. I was jealous that Mom loved having you around. That Dad never pressured you the way he pressured me. You got to be the screw-up and still be loved. I had to be perfect. And so you burned everything down, I said quietly. There was a knock at the door. Madeline flinched. I opened it to find my parents standing there, exhaustion etched into every line of their faces. My father looked gray, smaller. We need to talk, he said. They stepped inside. Madeline turned to my mother, eyes pleading. Tell me she's lying. But my mom wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Madeline. Madeline, my father said softly, we found the metadata on the files sent to the press. They were taken from your phone in December. Her face drained of color. And the IP address, my mother added through tears. It traces back to our house, to the exact dates you were staying with us. Silence crashed down around us. Why? My father whispered. Why would you do this to me? Madeline broke down completely, words tangled and incoherent. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought I could control it. You tried to frame your sister, my mother said, voice shaking. Your own sister. She's always been your favorite, Madeline screamed suddenly. She gets to fail and you love her anyway. I had to be perfect and it was never enough. Dad opened his mouth to deny it, but the hesitation was there, and that hesitation said everything. I stood. My legs trembled, but my voice didn't. I'm done. All three of them looked at me. I hope the investigation doesn't destroy the business, I said to my father. I really do, but I can't be part of this family anymore. Dad nodded slowly. I understand. You chose her over me, I continued, when you let her kick me out. I'm just finally accepting that choice. Pearl, my mother started. I need you to leave, I said. Madeline stared at me, horror-stricken. You'll forgive me eventually. I'm your sister. A sister doesn't do what you did, I said. That word doesn't apply anymore. They left, all of them. I locked the door and slid down to the floor, my back against it, shaking. Jennifer came home an hour later and found me there. She didn't ask questions. She just sat beside me. You were right, she said softly. You deserve better. 6 months have passed since that night. My father pleaded guilty. His company survived, barely, under federal supervision. Madeline moved back into my parents' guest room, the one I was offered. Her marriage dissolved. Her reputation followed. Last week, a letter arrived. From Madeline. I read it, I folded it, I put it away. Maybe someday I'll respond. But today isn't that day. Today I'm living my life. And that's enough. For a long time after that night, I thought closure would feel louder. I imagined relief would arrive like a wave. Dramatic, overwhelming, unmistakable. I thought I'd wake up one morning and feel victorious, vindicated, at peace. Instead, closure came quietly. It came in the form of silence. No more angry phone calls. No more accusations disguised as concern. No more waiting for my family to finally see me the way I'd always hoped they would. They were gone. And so was the constant ache of wanting their approval. The investigation into my father's construction company dragged on for 3 months. Every few weeks, another article would surface. Details about misclassified workers, unpaid insurance, back taxes that made my stomach knot even though I hadn't been involved in any of it. My father eventually pleaded guilty to 3 counts of tax evasion. He didn't go to prison. He paid massive fines, agreed to federal oversight, and had to restructure the business he'd spent 30 years building. His name, once respected in our town, became something people lowered their voices about. Madeline's divorce was finalized in October. Ethan took everything. The condo, most of their savings, even the car. She moved back in with my parents, into the guest room downstairs, the one I'd been offered like a consolation prize the night she erased me from my own home. The irony wasn't lost on me. My mother called once a week for the first month, asking if I'd consider family therapy. She cried. She apologized in vague ways that never quite crossed the line into accountability. I just want us to be a family again, she'd say. But what she meant was, I want things to feel normal again. And normal for us had always meant me swallowing my pain so everyone else could be comfortable. So I said no. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. My father never called at all. 6 months after everything fell apart, my life looked nothing like it used to. Jennifer and I were still in the apartment. The mismatched furniture, the uneven lighting, the space that was ours. I'd been promoted at work. My freelance business had grown enough that I was able to start putting real dents in my student loans again. I was tired, but it was the good kind of tired, the kind that comes from building something real. One evening, I came home to find an envelope on the kitchen counter. No return address. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Madeline. I stood there for a long time before opening it, my fingers hovering over the flap like it might bite me. Curiosity won, the way it always does. Inside was a single page. Pearl, I know you probably won't read this. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know you were right. She wrote about therapy, about finally admitting how much of her life had been driven by fear and comparison, about realizing she'd mistaken perfection for worth, about how Brandon leaving had shattered the illusion she'd been clinging to. I wasn't your sister when I did what I did, she wrote. I was a jealous, insecure person who hurt everyone around her because I couldn't face my own failures. Her handwriting grew shakier toward the end. I'm trying to become someone worthy of being your sister again. I don't expect a response. I just wanted you to know you always deserved better. I'm sorry I couldn't see that before I destroyed everything. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. Maybe someday I'll respond. Maybe someday the hurt will soften enough that I can imagine something new growing in the ashes. But today isn't that day. Today, I wake up in an apartment I chose, with a life I built, surrounded by people who don't make me earn my place in their hearts. Today, I don't have to compete. I don't have to perform. I don't have to disappear so someone else can shine. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's walking away from the people who broke you and living well enough that you never need their apology.